What is up, everybody? We are going to get right back into reactor blocks and continue exploring all of the various options that are contained in the TOYBOX Nano Pack library. If you click into the reactor interface, just start typing on your keyboard nano oscillator, and we will find the last oscillator in the list. We have reached the end of all of the options of oscillators, so you can watch all of the previous videos in the series to see what all of these other ones sound like. The table oscillator, after spending a bit of time with it, is probably one of the most interesting, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. So, as you can see, I've also got my sine bank oscillator in here. I'm going to go ahead and leave the pitch patched in there. However, I am going to actually patch in the table oscillator into the VCA. So I'm going to go out of the table into the VCA, and that is going to be what is controlling the sound. Now we actually have something. We've actually got something in there, interestingly enough, and we have the first original oscillator pulled out of there. So I'm just going to now patch in a pitch cable. So there is some sort of sound coming out of the table oscillator, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull in a scope, a single scope, so that we can visualize what this is doing. So that's what the waveform currently is. It's barely anything. Now, I probably accidentally clicked in there and created this little part of the waveform. So this is what we want to get into with the table oscillator, is that its default position should be this. It's probably nothing. There's nothing coming out of here because the table oscillator is actually like a template where you can create any variety of oscillator waveforms inside of it via the recording input and just the ability to draw into the interface. So if we read the description in here, it says an oscillator that reads from a table that can be drawn with a mouse or written to using the import. And so that's why I've actually got this sine bank oscillator in here, because I'm going to actually patch this in to the import, right? And that's going to be just an audio cable going in there. But if I decide to hit this record button, record enable, enables writing into the table from the import, right click to randomize the table, then what that gives us the ability to do is actually record a waveform from another oscillator into this oscillator and get a version of that going. And we'll be able to see it and we'll be able to hear it via the scope as well. So we already know that we were just getting some sound a minute ago. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the record enable button. And as I do that, I'm going to start turning this position knob, the current position in the table, to write to from the import when recording is enabled. All right, so that's kind of how this recording process works here. So we're just going to hit record enable on the table oscillator. It's now recording. I'm going to start playing some just to get the actual oscillator moving, even though we know it's actually moving. In fact, we could confirm this by bringing in another single scope and just patching that directly in. So we know this oscillator is doing something. And what we can do is start writing this into the table oscillator by turning this position knob. And so obviously I've created some sort of waveform by dragging the position knob back and forth that's vastly different from this oscillator, but what it's taking is it's taking the waveform and recording it into different positions in the waveform of this table. And basically you can create just any sort of manner of waveform that you could probably think of. You might just, spend a bit of time experimenting with this and getting a sound out of it that you like. So I'm going to reset this. You can double click to reset. Now it's back to nothing. And then I'm going to just start drawing into the table. Drag to paint values into the table. And so that's how you can experiment with this as well, is you can actually just draw into that little area right here, into the table, into the actual table, and you can just start building some crazy waveform. Then if we turn the recording off, I just quickly grabbed an output from the sine bank oscillator and chucked it into the FM input there, which we can now dial in with this FM input knob. And then if we turn up the original oscillator, we'll probably get a nice undertone to the whole sound here. That way you can still hear the note actually coming through even when we go into those wild FM'd sort of sounds. So this is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite oscillator, because I think the possibilities in this are completely endless. Every time I pull this table oscillator up, unless I save this rack, it's going to be fully different every single time. And that's, I think, one of the really interesting things about that is that when you pull up these other oscillators, they're dialed in flavors with dialed in presets and dialed in waveforms that have already been created. Whereas with this, you're creating your own unique waveform every single time. And so that's probably the coolest thing to me, is that it's going to be unique. And again, unless I decide to save this rack, that's gone. That, you know, that actual waveform is completely gone. But if I, you know, again, just come in here, jump into the table oscillator, start dialing in some unique sounds, it's going to give you a unique sort of sound every single time. That's the coolest thing. So I'm just going to do some searching for anything related to table just to see if there are options here to control the table of this table oscillator a little bit more. And I don't know if there's anything in here. I'm literally just, you know, I haven't done much prep for this. I'm just intuitively wondering if there are some other options. So yeah, this is table shape, high quality wave shaper. So these have similar interfaces. And look, the entire nano pack is meant to have a very tight build in terms of the form factor and the amount of space it's taking up in the rack and stuff like that. So that's cool. I was just wondering there. And at any rate, this is... What you could do if you want a little bit better control over a particular control, you could actually just bring in a nano fader, and this will allow you to actually patch in something to control a particular knob if that's what you want to do there. So until next time.